Hello, this is the Blast Report podcast on all things blasting. My name is 𝗧𝗵𝗲 with New Wave Consulting, and I want to thank all the drill and blast teams along with those supporting them who are out there on the pattern. The production team at Blast Think and I would like to welcome you to today's episode of the Blast Report podcast. This episode of the Blast Report podcast is brought to you by the Best in the West Conference. The Best in the West Conference regularly hosts over 300 participants bringing together mining companies, drill and blast suppliers, and government agencies to focus on safety, education, and innovation. It is with great pleasure to share this sponsorship opportunity as a congratulations to Shashi Kanth from the organizers of the Best in the West. In the last 20 years, they have distributed over $150,000 in scholarships to students from over 7 states. As a longtime member and professor, we want to acknowledge Shashi's hard work and dedication to the industry. We hope our listeners enjoyed this episode and plan to see you on April 22nd, 2026 at the 37th Annual Best in the West Conference. All right, we've got Shashi Kanth here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for coming on to the Blast Report. We're here at Best in the West, and your name came up as someone who we should talk to for get an interview in, and you've got quite a unique story of your travels and your path in your career. Would you mind letting our listeners know a little bit about who is Shashi and where your roots came from?
Certainly. First of all, thank you for having me here today. And for all your listeners out there, thank you guys for what you do every day in and out. That's what keeps this industry alive. So as you're driving to work or wherever you're listening to this, thank you very much for
Absolutely.
my heart.
We couldn't do this without our listeners. So
Absolutely.
That's true.
So I wanted to thank them and acknowledge them first and foremost. Well, my name is Shashi, as you said, and I'm originally from India. That's where the name. And went to school in India, got my undergraduate degree in mining engineering, and worked at an iron ore mine, southern part of the country, and did everything from production planning, short-term production to long-term planning, and didn't get involved in blasting a whole lot, although I saw that on the sidelines. And then came to the United States for my master's degree at the wonderful school called South Dakota School of Mines and Technology.
Right down the road.
Right down the road from here. That is home. And got my master's degree there. And what's interesting is that was in the early 90s, very early 90s. And if you remember, that was the time when the first recession was about to hit. I think it was Bill Clinton was president then, and recession was about around the corner. So mining was not doing very well, and finding jobs was very tough, especially for foreign students. And something very interesting happened. I was standing in the lobby of our department at the secretary's desk, and a fax came by. This is way back when we didn't have emails, it was fax. A fax came by, and she looked at that and she said, "Hey, look, here's a company looking for foreign students to go and do a study for their market in their home country." Now, let me look at it. And there was a list of countries, and India was one of them. And it was from a company I'd never heard of. It was Ensign Bickford company. And I'm like, that's interesting. And I saw there was a number to call. So we called, and they're like, yeah, we'd like to talk to you. Can you come down to Connecticut? And I kid you not, my first question was, where is Connecticut? I didn't know where it was. So it started off from there. So that's very humble beginnings. I went there as a foreign student doing a market survey for that company overseas. And I came back, it was a summer job, 3 months.
3 months back in India.
Correct. And to basically survey every single mining company, quarry, explosives company, ask them, hey, what do you do for initiating systems? At that time, non-electrics was not being used. It was all cord and boosters. And it was quite interesting that Ensign Bickford wanted to get in there with non-electrics. So that was the market study. I came back, gave a report on it, and that ended up with, you know what, I think we're going to do this. So the company hired me and trained me, and I spent about 2 years just going around the country with sales reps from every different region. And that learning, you cannot replace that with anything,
Mhm.
absolutely anything. I can toss some names that a lot of our listeners will relate to.
Go for it. Yeah, this is
I traveled, so we had a ride along, almost like a police thing, you ride along. I rode along with different sales reps around the country.
EB was very famous for that.
Correct.
That was one of their best training programs. A lot of
Absolutely.
guests on the podcast have gone through that.
Absolutely. And you cannot replace that with any course, any book, anywhere. That was School of Hard Knocks. I traveled with some really big names like Mike Burrell, traveled with Tom Barkley up in the Iron Range. I traveled in California with Dale Neese. I traveled with Dennis Johnson in Kentucky. All the names that all our listeners can relate to, right? These are big names. And they certainly molded and shaped what I should know about the explosives industry and early beginnings. So once I got a little bit of a hand on the products, I started working overseas and under the guidance of Tom Treleaven and Lenny Smith, a lot of great people, Frank Luca, we all know Frank, Ted Wilkinson, all of these great guys helped me out quite a bit, taught me the ropes, and enjoyed really a good 12, 13 years in the company promoting non-electrics around the world. Did India and then went to Malaysia, Korea, a lot of places.
When you were that student, that's such a smart marketing for them to go reach out and say, hey, go back home wherever you are and see if we can enter your industry. And that gave you that's a brilliant idea for a company. You got paid to do that.
Sure.
Was that interesting? Like, I mean, I've been to India. You speak Hindi when you were going to all these different places, or Tamil, or how was
All
that
of it.
communication but where are you from in India, and what was your language versus how did you communicate with all the other languages in India? How did that play out for you when you did do that project?
Well, great question. India is a country with about 1,600 dialects and 14 officially recognized languages. So if you look at a currency bill from India, which is called a rupee, like on a dollar bill, it says $1.
Mm-hmm.
On a 1 rupee or a 10 rupee bill in India, it says 10 rupees in 14 languages.
14 languages.
And those are all officially recognized by the government, can be used in court and everywhere. So having grown up in one of the southern states, you by default end up learning at least 3 to 4 to 5 languages. So I spoke Kannada, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, a little bit of other languages from the north as well. So that helped. So I went from state to state, mine to mine, spoke to different companies. Communication wasn't an issue at all because India was ruled by the British for 200 years, so everybody speaks English.
Okay.
Albeit with a funky accent, but everybody
Okay.
speaks English.
Okay.
So that was never an issue.
So that wasn't an issue
Absolutely not.
at all. Hey, all right. I would have assumed that would have been almost like visiting completely different.
It does feel like it because culture is different, food's different, language different, everything is different. But it was a very rewarding experience. And you're right, it was a smart move for the company to just hire a college student rather than have an employee go do that. There's a lot of risks involved and all that with sending out, a highly paid employee. So this way it was almost like a try before you buy kind of an option, because once they were convinced, my report was quite encouraging that, hey, this is a country where your products can be used. There is a market there. And that was right around the time when the country was going through a open invitation for foreign investment, because it was a very protected market. Most third world countries were that way, and they slowly started opening up. So there was an ability for the company to go in there, and eventually we did. So Ensign Bickford did open a plant in India making shock tube-based non-electric detonators. That was a resounding success. Those were early days, so it was quite interesting to convince somebody that you take the cord out of the hole and put shock tube in.
Yeah.
So when a cord goes off, you have a fireball that's good few inches, almost a foot, and that destroys your powder column. But when you put a shock tube, you don't have that column disruption, so you don't need as much powder because your powder is now, the integrity of the powder is good. So because you have better energy utilization, you can now expand your pattern. Drilling cost goes down because one hole saved is a lot of money. If you can eliminate an entire row, because your patterns are slightly expanded. That's a huge amount of money. That will pay for the detonators.
Yeah, there are still people using that cord down
Sure.
the
Well,
hole. I
there's
mean,
lots
in
of reasons.
coal here, I understand, but there are other places where they're still doing that.
There is a place for it. It's certainly good technology, and there's a place for it. And Ensign Bickford, incidentally, made detonating cord. They still do to this day. There are other versions. So there's a time and place for it as well. It's got a unique application.
When you then were doing your ride-alongs and going with each of these individual people, was there what were some of the stories that you might have that you can share with us? And you can share the ones that you think you might not be able to share. That's what we're here for.
That's understood. Yeah. I'm sure we can edit some things out, but no, most of them are being good. Excellent. As a foreign student in the US, one of the biggest learning I had from that ride-alongs around the country was how diverse we really are. Even though English is a common language, well, there's so many differences. And they're all subtle, but you will not notice that until you start traveling to these places and talking to the people. My very first shot I was on was with 𝗕𝗲𝗽 𝗕𝗹𝘀 up in the Northeast. It was a quarry up by Massachusetts, Granby, that area. And that was quite interesting. But my very first outside, that was home. I lived in Connecticut. My first travel outside of home, believe it or not, was to 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Kentucky. And there was a coal mine up there. I still remember there was a Holiday Inn. We stayed there. And then we went up to the mine. And it was just an absolute eye-opener. I'd never been to places like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a cord plant in Graham, Kentucky. I ended up going to Paducah and just traveling all those areas. I'd been to every nook and cranny of this country that I'd never thought I'd go to. And that's been absolutely rewarding. And to share a funny thing, we spoke about detonating cord versus shock tube, right? So because of the difference in VOD, you can never put a shock tube and a cord in the same hole. Because the cord shoots 26,000 feet per second, shock tube 7,000, so it'll cut off the shock tube and you'll have a misfire. So that's a big no-no. So under training, we had a sales rep, Kerry Harnish, who was in this region, in the Black Hills, worked in Wyoming. He's from Sheridan originally, and unfortunately, I think he's left us. But he had drilled that into my head that you cannot do that. He dropped me off at a coal mine here called Cordero Rojo. And he was going to go do something else or visit some other site. He said he'd come back and he just helped the crew here to shoot. I was loading holes. And we thought we'd play a trick on him. So by the time he got back, I had taken a spool of detonating cord and cut about a foot long, 18 inches long cord pieces. And I stuck it in the stemming, in the drill cuttings, after stemming, right next to the shock tube where it had come out. So we were using trunk line delays. This was easy det type product. So we had the punch block outside, and then I stuck a piece of detonating cord to make it look like it was coming all the way from down.
Yeah.
So I still remember he had a brown truck, maroon color. He parked, and he looked at it, walked, and I could see his ears go red, and he was hopping mad. And he's like, "Come here." I'm like, "Yeah, Kerry, what's up?" He was frothing at his mouth, and he was just about to cuss me out. "Did I not tell you this is no, you cannot do that. Dude, think about this." And he reaches down and grabs the cord, pulls it out. It comes out of the hole. He goes, "Yeah." So we had him good. So I'll never forget that. And years later, when I was teaching college, I would always share the story with the students. It did two things. One is it lightened up the class. Two, they all remember it to this day. What better way to explain that than share a funny story like that, right? Yes. So yeah, so it's been things like that always. It's been good learning. And
what were some of the struggles that you had, let's say, pulling into Hazard County and all of a sudden you're walking on a blast pattern that going, who the hell is this guy? And they probably weren't even wanting to switch over to non-electric. And now, you come in with a different accent or something like that, or now you're a fancy guy from corporate. Something. What was some of the interesting stories you had there on that subject?
Well, first of all, I don't think that was an issue at all. Simply because you don't walk in there and say, hey, let me show you I know something better, right? That's not how it's done. You watch, observe, and learn. Because I was still fresh out of college and I had a fairly junior role in the company. And you first have to befriend them before you start talking technology or anything, right? And I'd meet people. I still remember there was a blaster. His name was Butch, and a ponytail guy, a super nice guy, but he hadn't traveled a whole lot from that area. And he asked me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "India." His first question was, "How come you speak English?" I said, "Well, we're a British colony for 200 years, so they taught us something, right?" So he was quite surprised, and but then he wanted to know where it was, and I'm trying to explain to him, and he had a hard time fathoming that because there was not a lot of exposure, right?
Yeah.
And like today, this was back in the early 90s. But I really didn't have any challenges that way. It's all about how you present. You don't walk in there and say, let me show this is a better way. You spend a lot of time learning what they do and asking a lot of questions, loading some holes with them and go break bread, win them over. You earn your credibility before you can bring something up.
Yeah.
And I taught that to a lot of my students. And later part of my career, I became a college professor for about 10-year period. And that's one thing I've always taught them is, and in this industry, Evan, you're always learning, right? There is no, I don't think anybody would understand or would say that I know it all. There is always something new to learn. So we're always a student. I don't care how many years we have in the industry. There's something new out there, or there's something old that we hadn't thought of or we hadn't known, whether it's a blasting technique or whether it's a new product or whether it's an option to do something. Like this afternoon, I sat in on a presentation where the gentleman was talking about tandem holes for a heavy, huge burden. Usually if you have a huge burden, let's go inclined hole so that the burden is evenly spread. You may not have that option. The drill may not be capable, or there may be some areas where it might throw some rock, but you can't really bring in the pattern too much for powder factor reasons. Well, what about 2 holes, big space, another 2 holes, big space? That way you're distributing the energy, managing it. Something new. I'd never heard it, seen it. He showed us the design. He showed us a blast. It was fabulous, right? So this is here we are in 2025, and I learned something new, right?
Absolutely.
That's the beauty of this industry.
Yeah, 100%. And you can go to you can go up the hall or Hudson County and still learn something new.
Absolutely.
Whether or not they even know where you're from or not. When you came to traveling to all these different regions, and you mentioned some of the subtleties in the different types of culture and whatnot, what were some of the things that you recognized on the pattern, the cultures differently on the pattern? You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Well, let's split that up into 2 things. One is on the technical side itself, the blasting side of things, and how blasting was done. Wet holes, dry holes, deep holes, short holes, quarries versus mines, those kind of differences. Culturally, there was also a difference on, what kind of labor pool and where they came from. Was it a union operation or not, which very, very few of them were at the time or even to this day. And whether it was a big corporate or a small company, whether it was short service or it was a mine personnel. So those little nuances of that. For example, in Nevada, it was a mine personnel who did all the loading and shooting. The companies just provided product. Whereas you come back down here to the Powder River Basin, it was downhole service. The company did everything. So those were some of the differences, and they all did things differently. But overall, it was really a great experience. I could never trade that for anything. If people have an opportunity to do that, they should totally do that. And I wish companies bring back that thing where people go to different locations and spend time, which I think a lot of the people do anyways by default, job-wise. But they should do that to college students. Internships, summer internships, send them to every single mine of a certain company, all over. It'll be tremendous amount of learning.
Yeah, I do. Hint to any of our big companies listening here, that interns tend to be looking for or college students start looking for their job in September and October, way before the summer. And
Explosive companies have always been notoriously bad about calling people this time of the year, asking them if they want to have a job in the summer. College students already.
So things are changing a little bit. I know for my company, I work for Nelson Brothers now. We do attend college fairs.
Good.
And we do attract summer students. We've had a few, and we continue to do that.
Bravo.
So we've been quite proactive with that. But it's a good reminder to some of the other companies to start doing that as well. It'll do one of two things, right? One, you get an opportunity to look at a student and see if there'll be a potential fit in the future. And two, the students look at that and go, is this a career I want to be in or not? So either they fall in love with it and they want to do it, or they'll say, this is not for me and don't want to do it, which is okay either way. Right?
It's necessary.
Yeah, you don't want to just go into a career and then decide months or years down the road saying, this is really not what I wanted to do. You're wasting everybody's time and money. But if you really fall in love with it and say, this is exactly what I want to do, you got a winner. So I think that risk is worth it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Blast Report podcast. I want to thank the team at Blast Think for producing this show, and please follow along for more episodes in the future, and share this podcast with your colleagues so we can continue to honor our industry and the people in it. Be safe and have a blast.